Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Obviously, the Vanguard meta in Warzone is extremely dominant. The Cold War, the Modern Warfare metas have sort of fallen off, but as of recently, it's become more and more apparent that some Cold War and Modern Warfare weapons are more competitive than we might have thought when it comes to just pure TTK. And today, I wanted to focus on the best weapons in Warzone, the MW guns. They feel the best, they have the best animations, the best sounds. We all know this by now because obviously they were built with the core game, they weren't integrated in, so they're naturally going to fit the smoothest, I guess you could say, in game. But we are breaking down the top 5 best MW guns to be using right now. As we go through it all, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. It does really help grow the channel. Let's try and go for 2,000 likes on this one. Would seriously appreciate it if we could hit that. And if you're new here or if you have not already subscribed, every day I got you covered with everything going on in COD, news, updates, loadouts, leaks, you name it, you're gonna find it right here. So feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. So at number 5, we have what at one point was arguably the #1 gun in the game, especially back on Verdansk. The MP5 was a beast. This was the go-to SMG for so long in game. You had an insanely good hip fire build with it. It had great sprint to fire, great mobility, really good TTK. Obviously, since then, it's been nerfed, it's been adjusted. We've seen the Vanguard subs implemented where they just have absurd mobility and damage, so it's going to be tough to beat any of the Vanguard guns. With these, you have to be a decent player, but they certainly can compete despite their lacking mobility and their lacking damage and attachment options here and there. But for specifically MW content, I mean, the MP5 is a go-to, at least in my own opinion. First up here, we are going for the monolithic integral suppressor, a little 2-for-1 best barrel and muzzle option combined into one there. We got the Merc foregrip on there for that better hip fire, then also some better standard control. The 45 round mags just for some increased magazine capacity. You got the 5 milliwatt laser on there for a better sprint to fire, also helping out with the hip fire though. Then lastly, you got a couple of choices. I'd personally go for the collapsible stock for that better movement to maybe try and get it a little bit closer to some of those Vanguard guns. You could also go for the Stippy Grippy if you wanted to. You could go for sleight of hand if you wanted to. Plenty of choices there, but the hip fire on this thing, the sprint to fire, the control, even despite being more of a short barrel and aggressive build, is still super good, so it's definitely very competitive. Now at number 4, I've got the CX9. This is very similar to the MP5 in a lot of ways. Personally, I just find it a bit easier to use. Maybe it's because it's fresher. Obviously, it was added into the game very late, so it's a little bit more new in our minds, but also it's strong and has a pretty solid TTK, especially over range, great mobility as well, so there's a lot of pros going for it here. What's curious about the CX9 is that you can build it almost identically to that MP5 build that we just did with the CX38S barrel. It's a monolithic integral, essentially better suppression, but also gives you better control, range, velocity, all of that. The 5 milliwatt laser, the 50 round drums, you could throw the Merc foregrip on there and then do something like the FR stock, which is basically the collapsible stock, and you have, like I said, basically an identical setup to what we had with the MP5 there. This setup though is going to be a little bit slower because of the barrel here, so if you wanted to maybe get something a little bit more speedy, you could throw on just a basic monolithic suppressor here. No barrel, you don't really lose all that much range, but you do gain a decent amount of mobility back. Also, for what it's worth, if you don't care to have the best control in the world because you're primarily fighting within 20 meters or so, drop the Merc foregrip, throw on sleight of hand, and with the 50 round drums, you have one of the spiciest reloads in the entire game. It is so fast, so that's a pretty unique setup for it as well. That certainly works. Obviously going to be a little bit harder to control, but up close recoil is not all that bad. Now at number 3, we obviously have a fan favorite, especially as of late. The M13 hype train is going full steam ahead as of the past few weeks, and honestly it is a top tier MW gun right now. I mean, it's got very basic control. That's why it's been such a huge hit for so long. And while obviously weapons like the AMAX, the Kilo, the STG, the Bar, the NZ, Vargo, XM4, etc., while those have all been significantly better than the M13 over time, this has still remained a top picked MW rifle because it is a laser beam. Doesn't have the craziest damage in the world, and its damage per mag is a little bit lacking, but its true TTK and its recoil combined give it a very good realistic TTK in game, just because it is very much so point and shoot for an MW gun. It's Vanguard-esque in that way, right? So basic setup here, honestly, we're first off going for the monolithic suppressor per usual. We're gonna go ahead and run the marksman barrel. This is the largest barrel in this case, so best range, velocity, and control. Commando foregrip on there as well for some better control. I got the 50 round mags or 60. The damage per mag will be slightly better with 60 because you do burn through ammo on this, but you're going to be a little bit slower here, so that's something to keep in mind. The mobility does suck compared to Vanguard rifles. Then lastly, we got the VOK 3x optic on there as well. Gonna go ahead and throw on the T-pose reticle for that super clean sight. The thing is a laser, it just is a little bit slower and that DPM is a little bit rough, but for an MW gun, it's very strong. Number 2 might be a bit of a surprise, but we actually have the PKM. I'll argue this till the end of time. The PKM has been one of the most reliable and consistent weapons in Warzone since day one. This thing really has not seen a ton of buffs or nerfs. It's just always been a super strong LMG. Now, unfortunately, the reason that this is not, a top 10 picked weapon and hasn't been a top 10 picked weapon throughout all of Warzone's history is because, well, it does have minimal recoil and an absurdly good TTK over range. Its mobility is awful. It is one of the slower guns in the game because obviously it is a light machine gun, so you gotta look past that fact if you want to use this. You're not going to be flying around. That's why you'd want something like an Owen gun, a Marco, a Blixen as a secondary here, so you could have that rotation and that speed. And for long range fights, you whip this thing out and it just is going to fry everybody, right? Also, its reload is pretty abysmal too. Luckily, because the magazine is so big, you don't have to reload all that often, but it does have some drawbacks, but it's true TTK, its realistic TTK are phenomenal because it is very, very easy to use. So here, first up again, we got monolithic suppressor as always. We've got the extended barrel, largest barrel again in this case, so best range, velocity, and control. We've got the snatch grip, which is super cool because it offers control and ADS speed, something you really never see paired in any attachments, so that's pretty cool. We've got the VOK 3x optic on there yet again, T-pose reticle as always. Then lastly, you got several different choices. I always like using the tac laser on here for a slightly better ADS, just makes it a little bit more aggressive. You don't need a magazine option here, it's already huge. You don't really need a rear grip. I don't feel like either of these are going to help out too much in a realistic scenario, right? Just because it is an LMG. Sleight of hands, not really a bad choice because that's super slow reload, or you could go for something like the close quarter stock for a slightly faster ADS too if you wanted, but this setup to me has been one that I've used for quite some time and it's gotten the job done. And then coming in at number 1, I've got the Ram 7. Very similar to the M13 in a lot of ways, obviously way more agile than the PKM, and its TTK is better than the M13, hence why I've got this above those. Its recoil, a little bit iffy, it does take some time getting used to, but after you master that, the thing is very consistent. Damage per mag, just as bad as it is over on the M13, honestly, but if you can look past that, if you know how to utilize this weapon well, you're gonna find some success with it, despite it not being a top tier Vanguard gun. So again, basic setup here, monolithic suppressor, Ranger barrel, largest barrel in this case. We've got the Commando foregrip. You gotta be using the 50 round mags, our sole option there. And one more time for today, the VOK 3x optic with that T-pose reticle on there. The thing will fry at medium range, long range. You could even build a close range variant if you wanted to. Drop the VOK, put on the Eclipse barrel, and then maybe throw on something like tac laser. You got a good sniper support option or like a mid-range option. There's some variety to it for sure, but that being said, that's going to wrap things up for this one. Those are the top 5 best MW guns in the game right now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new to the channel or if you have not already subscribed, every day I got you covered with all things going on in COD. So feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. And I will catch you guys later. Peace out.